What about this new commander? Do you think? Give me a general's perspective on Gerasimov, and what difference a new commander might make on the battlefield from the Russian side.
So this is really a very significant change. The previous rotations of commanders who have held, quite rightly, frankly, to have failed, have been by putting a senior general in charge in and around Ukraine, but separate from, frankly, the Russian MOD. But General Gerasimov is the head of the armed forces, and this move means that the war in Ukraine is now run directly by the Russian Ministry of Defense. And so it has aligned the war much more closely with the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Kremlin. And in doing that, there is a risk, of course, that if this fails again, there's almost nobody else to blame but the people at the very top.
Yes.
But part of the reason for doing this is to strengthen the case of the Russian MOD's hold on the war in the face of serious criticism from organizations like the Wagner Group and a lot of Russian ultra-nationalist bloggers that are claiming that they could do the war better. So,
yes.
So this is about marking territory too.
Yes, I mean clearly Vladimir Putin isn't looking for greater clarity on who to blame the next time there's blame to be dished out. He wants more success. And Richard, from the very beginning, we've seen criticism of Russian tactics described as being far too top-down, not enough left, not enough discretion and freedom to act, left to commanders on the ground, lower down the food chain. This doesn't seem, I would have thought, likely to change that. Give me your view, again, as a commander.
So I don't think this does change, and I think in many ways it's become more difficult. So the Russian way of war is very top-down and centralized, and the junior commanders in the field who are looking at the situation on the ground are very averse to using their initiative and taking decisions, and they much prefer to be told what to do, not least because they can't then be blamed for it going wrong. And this is a sclerotic approach to war and contrasts very deeply with the much more distributed, innovative and agile Ukrainian system, where good people on the ground are well supported with information and fire and allowed to get on with it. And this is one of the reasons why the Russians have really struggled on the battlefield.
Yes. Now, when it comes to commanders, you will know infinitely more than me that the right commander in the right place can have a significant impact in terms of morale, and if that commander happens to command the faith and the trust of troops. Now, do you see anything for the Russians to be optimistic about there? Because all we ever hear from the front in Ukraine, from the Russian side, is a complete lack of morale, a complete absence of faith and trust.
So we should be clear that General Gerasimov is a very, very competent senior general. He's been one of the most profound influences on how war is fought in our time for more than a decade. But beneath him, there are some very good officers, but many of them are strangled by their own system. And we should recognize that in the way that Russia has fought this war, a lot of their junior officers and their non-commissioned officers have been killed and wounded. So there's a real dearth of experience, and that means less capable junior leaders in the field. And as all these, frankly, hundreds of thousands of Russian conscripts are brought into the war, they are badly led. And not only are they badly led, in many cases, they don't really know what they're fighting for, and they're not fighting for their own families and their own homeland in the way that the Ukrainians are. And this difference in will and morale has been profoundly important to the way that Ukraine has not only held on, but fought back.
I wonder what your thoughts are and reflections are on the Wagner group. We've discussed them a lot in recent times, pretty much since the beginning of this war. And now we're seeing evidence of some conflict or strife between the Wagner group and its commander Prigozhin on one side and the mainstream Russian military on the other, taking rival positions in claiming success for battlefield advances and successes. Now, is it not, to me as a complete layman, it seems the significant involvement of a private army like the Wagner group is a recipe for dissent. Would I be wrong about that?
No, I think you're right. The Wagner is a peculiarly Russian phenomenon. It's been around for quite a long time. It's an arm's length army of the Russian military. They share bases, they share equipment, they share training facilities, they share medical facilities. So they are clearly linked. However, the Wagner Group is separate from the armed forces, and that has two really important implications. First of all, it can recruit from all sorts of places. So they are recruiting directly from Russian prisons and saying to people, you can come and fight. By the way, you're probably not going to come back, but you can come and fight. And if you survive 6 months, you'll be pardoned. And many have done this. And that's not a source of effective soldiers that many armies elsewhere in the world would commend. But the bigger thing is it because it can do things its own way, it can pay more money, but it can also do things that the Russian government can deny. So some of the atrocities that we've seen in Africa as well as in Ukraine being committed by the Wagner Group. But what's very interesting is that in the heart of the fighting in the Donbass in the east of Ukraine right now, you have the Wagner Group fighting alongside the Russian army and for its own purposes claiming success, which is clearly really shared with the Russian army where there is such success to be shared. And this is about winning influence with Putin. And we should also recognize the Wagner Group is a business. And one of the things it's doing in Ukraine is putting down commercial routes in a way that an army wouldn't. So this is, I think, really dysfunctional. But the Wagner Group is not a healthy thing to have anywhere.